And in a second, I will say the countdown. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, start. So we should all be synced up. If you're not synced up, go back and try to get my audio going at the same time with that countdown. And here we are on reverse tempo.
Okay, so again, this is day 9, doing a little bit of commentary with Noni on these matches. In this second game, as well as the third game, we're going to try to focus a little bit more on what the specifics of the game were, because in the first game we focused a lot on what the basic themes of the match were. That Bisu's very aggressive in the mid-game, and that Savior's a little bit expansion-hungry, which cost him the game. So we're going to go ahead and focus a little bit more on what happened precisely in the games, why they're really little subtle, clever things that both players are doing. Again, for those of you who've seen the first-person VOD, it's already significant to note how clever Savior's Overlord scouting patterns are. Again, he's assuming his Protoss opponent is early expanding, so if you see at the north, you'll see the Overlord scouts just past the minerals to see if he's foraging, and then opts not to scout for it. Also, note that his Overlord hooks straight down to the 6 o'clock position as opposed to the 9 o'clock position, because he's assuming that if a Protoss player was at the 9 o'clock position, the probe would pass by that scouting Overlord at the north. And now we get to see a gentleman wearing a horse hat, which is pretty much fucking awesome. So,
yeah, that's right. And again, we see Bisu here is gonna find Savior on his first try.
I hate that. Oh, it's like so obnoxious of Zerg to have to deal with that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and this time, well, in the first game we saw that Bisu wasn't that successful at delaying that hatchery, but in this game he will be. And you can see Savior has that second drone ready at the mineral only in case he's unable to make a hatch at the natural, and he is going to have to use that second drone.
Oh my god, fucking owned. Yeah, eat it, Savior. By the way,
there it is.
I generally like Protoss players far more than I like Zerg players, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you know, deal with it. So yeah, we see Bisu taking the opportunity to quick expand, which again is just a little bit of an advantage that he's able to take in all 3 games, but he's able to go pylon Nexus Forged Cannon instead of having to go pylon Forged Cannon by like not scouting his opponent quickly enough. And it's little things like that that can add up throughout the game. And this isn't too big of a setback that Savior deals with early, having to take his mineral natural first. So overall the game's starting off fairly standardly.
That's right.
And there's some old lady who I assume is the mother of one of these fine gentlemen playing. And there's Savior, and we want him to die. And he does. That's very, very pleasing. The thing that's a little bit different in this game about Savior's opening is he doesn't open up too expansion hungry. Again, the double fast expansion is extremely standard, and then taking this gas to get the fast layer is also extremely standard. But he opts to get Mutalisks in his signature extremely fast manner to try to do some sort of harass early on. And Savior also plays a lot more cautiously by getting his Hydralisk den out significantly more quickly. So overall, I felt that Savior's opening in this game was pretty effective, just as a general good counter. Should Bisu have gone Fat Zealot Legs, he would have had Sunken Colonies and Mutalisks up very quickly, so that would have been fine. But talk a little bit about what it was that Bisu did in this early game stage that was really advantageous for him.
Well, again, there's a lot of different ways that you can follow up from building a fast expansion, and Bisu seems to have found a very effective build where he gets these early Corsairs, and in this game he's going to go for Reavers, which is pretty natural for reverse tempo, I do believe. You see that he's getting a second gas there when the cybernetics core is only halfway, and that's a very key thing here. Is he needs to get that gas going. And here he's going to send this zealot coming up just to make Savior lose some minerals here by stopping the drones from mining. But well, I'll just let you guys see Bisu's build as it unfolds, and I'll point things out as it happens. But I think the second gas there is really key, and you'll see that this fast Corsair with non-stop Corsairs, where he doesn't just build one to scout or one to kill like 1 or 2 overlords, he keeps them coming. And it's going to be very good because Savior is going to go for the Mutalisks, and the Corsair Cannon combo is going to make those Mutalisks do almost nothing.
Yeah, again, in StarCraft, it's always important to note what you're doing should be some sort of transitional play. You should, every action that you make, especially in terms of tech decisions, should allow you to smoothly move into some sort of nice flow strategy. A huge error we see a lot of Protoss players do in this position is that the Protoss player will not want to act unless he finds out exactly what his opponent is doing. He will make one Corsair, then fly around, see what his Zerg's doing, and then respond appropriately. Bisu takes the early starport and does a beautiful transition with it. He basically, if he sees his opponent going Mutalisks first, he's going to continue to pump out Corsairs to directly counter the Mutalisks. On the other hand, if his opponent is going Hydralisk Den first for Lurkers, he's still going to pump out a lot of Corsairs, maybe 3 to 4, but primarily to do an aggressive sort of harassment. See, we see the first Corsair pop out, and there's already another one building. This will allow for a really, really aggressive play by Bisu in the mid-game, just like what we saw in the mid-game on Launchness where he got Dark Templar.
Yeah, this constant Corsair thing that we're seeing from Bisu is really, really effective, and it's really, really brilliant. But on the other hand, it's very hard for a Protoss player to have this kind of control. You definitely have to practice this strategy many times before you can do this as effectively as Bisu. It's definitely not an amateur move here as far as the difficulty level of the execution of this strategy.
And also,
he has a million things going on.
Yeah. A subtle thing to note is that Bisu spotted the fact that Savior made a layer at his natural expansion with that first harassing Zealot, so he's fairly confident his opponent isn't going to try to do any sort of mass Hydralisk bust the front, which is kind of why he slacked off on the cannons. And speaking of slacking off on cannons, Bisu just barely gets this one off in his main in time. Look, it just finishes right then. Again, that shows how beautifully timed Bisu's opening was. That even on 2 of the closest positions on Reverse Temple, he's able to adequately get cannons and Corsairs up in time to hold off this Mutalisk harass. And the harass does virtually nothing. Saber didn't even get the chance to kill a pro, which, although is a little bit of a missed micro, still great opening by Savior or by Bisu so far.
That's right.
Well,
and I believe I think he's already built a citadel. I think there's a citadel over in his main, maybe not, but you're definitely going to see that while he's building these Reavers and Corsairs, he's already looking ahead to his Templar tech and to get some gateways up here in a second. And you'll see he definitely doesn't overinvest in Reavers, as some people might do. It seems like a very subtle Reaver build here, where he gets some Reavers, but the main his main attack is going to be once his gateway units come out.
Yeah, this is a really subtle, great transition that a lot of high-level Protoss players do, especially on maps where you have an island expansion you can take fairly easily. For example, Arcadia, Reverse Temple, or Rite of Valkyries. It's really nice to go this Corsair Reaver thing early, but just only do it off 1 port and 1 robo bay. You can take the bottom right island fairly easily, and then you can transition into a mass gateway opening, or a mass gateway mid-game. And that not only throws a lot of Zerg players off, but even if the Zerg is totally prepared for it, it's still an extremely strong strategy. And also I think something that's important to do right now is that we've been raving about Bisu all mid-game, but what about what Savior's doing? Is this good or not? Right now Savior's playing very standardly against this opening. He's trying to expand, but he's not expanding too much too quickly. That was a really good move by Savior to take that top expansion with the gas that's very, very, very close by. You'll note he started 5 hatcheries before he took that expansion up there, so this is really good by Savior not to try to be too overly greedy with taking the expansions. But there's one little thing that Savior did that I think really cost him the game. He built his 4th hatchery directly below his lair at the Mineral Natural. That allowed Bisu to really abuse this corridor that we're seeing him wander up right now. we'll see Bisu wander up this corridor, and when Savior wants to try to attack, it's really difficult for him to position his things exactly as he wants. He can send some things in through the back and can do some magic with his mutalisks, but when he wants to come from the north side of that valley, he can't exactly pull it off nicely because he's essentially like blocking himself with his hatchery. He manor hatchery.
That's right. Yeah, that was a major problem. In fact, I question if maybe he should have did his double expansion going to his nat and to that 12 o'clock natural to begin with, because I think he definitely could have defended it. I don't know what our Zerg player here thinks, but
yeah,
it seemed like it would have been a strong opening.
Yeah, in general, it's a little. You should always be a little wary to overextend yourself against a player who's going Corsair Reaver. We'll talk about that in just a minute, so let's focus on this battle right now. You'll see Saber's positioning his stuff above, and he'd really like to hit that dead on, but you'll see a few Reaver shots come in. So here's the Reaver shot behind. Now watch this Reaver shot with the Zerglings above. Alright, right there. You see, that kind of thing is a direct result of the really poor hatchery placement by Savior. And again, although Savior managed to kill off all these ground units, Bisu has a ton of Corsairs left over, which can be really obnoxious, especially when you're out of air. You just have these Hydralisks. You don't have Overlord speed. It's just really difficult to deal with that kind of thing by Bisu. Again, Bisu is putting pressure on all game long. He's doing harassment with his Corsairs, then tries to do this attack. When the attack fails, he busts out with his Corsairs and tries to do more damage. But what I was saying earlier, because Noni asked what my opinion was about his expanding pattern against this Corsair Reaver kind of opening. When a player does this Corsair Reaver, it's really important not to overextend yourself too early. In the late game, it's okay to kind of expand all around, all over the place. We saw Choja do that expand everywhere, all over the place type style against Bisu on Arcadia in the NBC Survivor League, and that's really strong in general, because Reavers tend to kill off expansions fairly slowly, even though they're difficult to deal with. But in the early game stages especially, you don't want to have your drone count fucked around with a lot. So it's really important that, it's really good by Saber that he didn't try to expand around too much when he saw his opponent going Corsair Reaver. And this is the
right, and we can see here this DT. Yeah, because Savior's got a lot of things going on with these Corsairs flying around that he's dealing with, and also he's orchestrating this attack here, and Bisu with perfect timing drops his DT in there and does tons of damage, and Savior cannot react to it quick enough.
Yeah, honestly, I feel that both players position themselves very nicely for the mid and late game stages. Savior had a really nice macro going, even though that valley was a little bit obnoxious to deal with during Bisu's aggressive attack. Savior was able to hold it off reasonably well. Not well enough that you'd say, oh, that's game now that Bisu lost that, but enough that, you know, Savior didn't lose and was able to continue to macro. And I really feel like the game would have stayed fairly even with both players' relative skill sets, but the fact that Bisu is able to get that Dark Templar into Savior's main, that one slip up by Savior is really what ends up costing him the game in the end, is that he could probably have held a few more of these attacks had he not lost all those drones and needed to replenish it. But then as we see, Savior starts to Bisu starts to slowly get like a bigger and bigger advantage after repeated attacks.
That's right. And also note that the positions are coming into play here, because imagine if Savior had started at 12, Bisu definitely could not be doing this attack this quickly, and he wouldn't have this wall to be protecting him the way it is. So definitely very hard for Savior.
Yeah, if Savior was at 12, Bisu likely could have taken the bottom right island expansion significantly more easily as well. So these are both factors to note in both directions. Who gets what advantage based upon the distances.
Yeah, but it definitely the game would have played out significantly differently. But this is just the game that we get to see.
Yeah, and again, try as he might, Savior just doesn't quite have enough stuff to deal with. Should really well-positioned Reavers in this valley. And really, again, Savior probably or possibly could have had enough stuff to hold this attack had he not lost all those workers in his main. That's just such a...
That's right, and again, that hatchery that he put below at his mineral only expansion, that second hatchery that he put there, was again a problem. So Bisu continued to exploit that.
And also, a lot of times players watching the game at this point are like, oh, well, it's over, like, Bisu's going to win. But it's also kind of important to note how Bisu is playing this out a little bit differently than he did in the previous game. In the previous game, he didn't really get that many more gateways. He just kind of opted to expand slowly and defend his expansions as he kind of put pressure on Savior. But in this game, Bisu really didn't retake his destroyed mineral natural quickly at all. He's really just trying to end the game immediately, which he does do. And it's really critical to distinguish the situations when it's okay for Protoss to try to take expansion slowly, or when it's more beneficial to go ahead and just put the pressure on and just eventually win by flooding the Zerg with units.
Yeah, definitely true. So, any more comments on this second game, Reverse Temple?
The Corsair harass is just really, really great. Because there comes this point where if Bisu gets a lot of Corsairs early, or excuse me, I shouldn't say Corsair harass, I should say his Corsair-oriented early game, where even if if his opponent does go Spire, and he gets a lot of Corsairs, once he's able to kill off air units reasonably well, it's really difficult for Savior to have a comfortable map control. So many Zerg players eventually surround the Protoss' main with speed overlords, and essentially the Zerg can position himself perfectly every single time regardless of what Protoss is doing. But that Corsair opening is just so strong because it not only allows you the advantage of killing off overlords really quickly and knowing exactly what Zerg's doing always with the easy scouting, it also makes any sort of harassment that Protoss wants to do really, really easy. It opens up a lot of options. You can move Dark Templar around the map freely, and Zerg can't afford the risk of having overlords or units wandering around. And then shuttles become really significant with harass. We saw that shuttle pop into Savior's main and just do a ton of damage. So just that opening with the Corsairs really, really allows for Bisu to have an extremely aggressive mid-game with tons and tons of options. He doesn't have to necessarily rely on some drop killing off X number of drones to win. He just constantly has options that he can take advantage of whenever he sees fit.
Yeah, and I think that's the real genius of his play here, because it is... You can make a bunch of Corsairs and you can control them well, but in the end you've still invested a lot of minerals and a lot of gas into Corsairs, and you've limited what you can do with your gateways. Yeah. But the genius of Bisu is that he uses what he gets very, very well, and the way he uses it is to put Savior in a defensive position and to always keep Savior looking everywhere on the map, so that inevitably Savior's going to miss out on something. And as we've seen here, it's been DT slashing away at drones, and Savior's just not going to be able to keep in the game against a constant aggressive style when he's losing drones like that.
Yeah. And also to speak a little more positively about Savior's play, we don't want I definitely don't want to give the impression that Savior somehow was just completely outclassed by 1,000 times by Bisu. Even though Bisu did win the games very convincingly, there's a lot of elements of Savior's play that are just absolutely spectacular. Like right after Savior holds off that attack, he instantly tries to go on the aggressive or on the offensive and try to do damage to the mineral natural. We saw that in both the game on Longinus and this game on Reverse Temple, that anytime he's not under direct pressure from his opponent, he's trying to put pressure back on his opponent. And also the transition that Savior makes, where he goes Mutalisk to Lurkers to Speed Hydralisks, and then obviously he'd end up kind of doing the mass Lurker Ultra in the endgame, or at least so we'd assume. That's just a really strong transition, because he can do pressure with the Mutalisks and then defend against Speed Zealots and a lot of ground-based attacks with the Lurkers, and then can defend against larger armies with effective Lurker Hydralisk control while he's taking tons of expansions, setting himself up for a really nice macro-oriented endgame.
Yeah, definitely. Savior's really, really good at no matter how much pressure he's receiving or what has happened in the game, he always keeps his eye on the same goals, and that's to put pressure back on his opponent, to slow down his opponent's macro, and all that kind of stuff. So even while he's being attacked, he's already thinking about how is he going to attack back, and a lot of Zerg players won't be thinking about that, and yet the counter attack requires you to be acting and planning it while you yourself are being attacked. And Savior's always planning that, and he's always getting ready for how he's going to counter, what his next move is going to be. So, very good player.
Yeah, truly the best offense is... Oh, how did that fucking quote go? The best defense is a good offense. Just, it's extremely important in the game of Starcraft to put pressure on your opponents, and I guess we've blabbed enough. Also, one other small thing is that Savior actually upgraded armor for his Mutalisks twice in that game, which is really weird. I don't think the commentators picked up on that, but when you rewatch the first-person VOD, Savior got a lot of armor for air really quickly, and I do not know what my opinion on that is. Anytime someone does something like that, I either think that the person is a complete idiot or knows exactly what they're doing. And with Savior, I mean, he probably knows exactly what he's doing. But I mean, still, that's just such an unorthodox thing to do.
The game probably just didn't pan out for that investment to really shine.
Yeah,
I'm sure he had something in mind.
In the end game.
Yeah. Or he might have been concerned about Bisu taking island expansions, and...
Yeah, that's also a good point.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Savior transition that armor upgrade into Guardians that game, because we saw Savior use a lot of Guardians against Nal Ra in their best of 5 in the NBC semifinals in the previous Star League. Just like that really excellent Guardian use, and then if your Guardians already have 2 armor, it's really difficult for a Protoss player in the end game to suddenly make a bunch of Corsairs to try to defend against the Guardians, especially when they have that much armor. So yeah, we should probably end this before it goes to like 45 minutes or something.
Alright, I have another thing to say, but I'll say it at the beginning of the next recording.